Welcome to the For the Love of the Game podcast with your hosts, Jefferson Belfort and Brian Hernandez, and our special guest, Giancarlo. This is episode 55. Um, this episode, actually, let me ask how everybody's doing. Giancarlo, since you're the guest, want to ask you first.
I'm doing phenomenal because you know why? Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler are in the finals once again, and I think they just may win the championship. We'll see.
Ooh, I like this. I'm
Oh,
excited to get into it.
always love a bold prediction to start off, right? Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. We saw a good basketball game last night. I was pretty happy, especially after our last episode we were on here. Like Miami's up 3-0 when we recorded, and I was like, oh, series is already over. And then I was really scared for a second, thinking that we're about to look foolish. I thinking everyone was about to look foolish. Like we thought a 3-0 lead was pretty safe, was a pretty safe bet, and it almost went away, but hey, they pulled through. They got it. Very excited to get more into just the Miami Heat, but I'm doing good. But Jeff, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. I watched game six, felt living down here, I feel for the Heat more. So like part I kind of embody some of it now, right? The emotions that come with it. So watching game six, watching uh how like all over the place of a roller coaster it was to like watch that to watch that game was crazy, but game seven was definitely satisfying to see how it ended. But I guess that's a great segue into what our topic is going to be today. And we will be doing a little bit of a deep dive into the Miami Heat's impeccable run that they just went on to heading into the finals. And then we'll have a discussion on legacies and whose legacy is going to be more cemented after this finals. Is it going to be Jokic or is it going to be Butler? Guys, are you ready to go?
Let's do
Let's
it.
let's go.
Perfect. So, as we mentioned, Miami Heat entered this. The Miami Heat entered this playoffs this year through the way via the way of the play-in. They started off the play-in actually looking like they didn't even deserve to be in the playoffs, losing to the Atlanta Hawks in that first initial game, but being able to muster all of the courage, the whatever they needed to dig deep to find to wind up beating the Chicago Bulls. And since then, it's been nothing but a Cinderella run for the Miami Heat. Giancarlo, as our guest, can you give us first, just give us a few words you would say about this run, and then you could, go a little bit deep on it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, I'm the biggest Miami Heat fan and Jimmy Butler fan. And even going into the beginning of the season, I didn't think there was any shot that they'd even be maybe, you know, uh, the semifinals of the Eastern Conference. I thought they'd probably be like a 7 or 8 seed or a 6 to 8 seed, wherever pretty much where they landed this year. I expected them at the beginning of the year because they didn't pick up any new players. It was the same team minus PJ Tucker, which is a notable loss. But as they started their playoff run, especially in the playing game, they did not look good at all. They looked exactly how they looked throughout the season. They couldn't score. They weren't very cohesive as a team, and I didn't think they'd be really going anywhere this year. I did not think they had any chance of beating the Bucks, but when they got that second win over the Bucks, I saw a little bit of hope, and I saw that hey, this team can actually come together, and it's more than just Jimmy Butler. All the role players are stepping up, as well as they're starting to make their shots as well, and that's really made a big difference.
No, I agree with that 100%. One thing that I've find very interesting about this run that they went on is like taking a look back at like other times where I felt that people, sports pundits and just fans as a whole are exaggerated that there's been a team in a lower seeded situation that can go and make that run for a championship. Like last couple of years, you have the Nets where people thought that they could have done that last year. Before that was the Lakers. People thought that they could do that before that. But the difference between Miami and all of those teams is there's a different type of cohesiveness that goes beyond the players, that is cemented through their culture, that is cemented through their front office, that's cemented through their coaching staff, which is cemented by their role players. Even a guy like Udonis Haslem, that from the outside looking in, a lot of people will kind of make fun of Udonis Haslem and his situation on this team, but he very much is a part of the reason why the Heat are consistently in the conversation for opportunities like this. And kudos to them to make it this far, because like it does take a lot of perseverance to get to this point. Brian, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I want to touch on. I think it was actually kind of interesting when you mentioned Giancarlo. You said that you didn't think the Heat were actually going to be that good this year. And you said you think they kind of actually landed up exactly where you expected. I think I even said it on this podcast. I actually definitely agreed with you in the sense of they didn't make any moves, they didn't make any upgrades. So I didn't think they were going to be better than the teams obviously that they beat now, where like the Celtics, the Bucks, Philly, especially, maybe even the Cavs. So I thought they were going to land closer to that 5th seed, but like where they landed the regular season, the 7th seed was pretty surprising. And then especially the play-in stuff was almost a disaster. I guess my question to you is more like, what's so different from this Miami team versus the regular season and almost play-in disaster Miami team, other than, let's say, potentially just like, obviously we can all see like the shot making's going up, but like what's so different between these two teams? It's so polarizing.
As crazy as it seems, I think it's the fact they don't have Tyler Hero, right? Because Tyler Hero, had so much of the ball, so much shots, and he's a great scorer, but he's not an efficient scorer. And the fact that Tyler Hero is not there, I think allowed players like Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, and Max Strus to step up and really showcase, like, hey, they're not like your typical role players. These are actually like, very good players that can probably start on most NBA teams. So I think the fact, as tragic as it was that he broke his hand, I think in reality it was actually a benefit to the Miami Heat because these role players got to elevate their game.
Definitely pretty. I really like that take. I'm interested. Are you worried at all? Because I think there's already reports saying that Tyler Hero might be back. Was it game 3? I think I saw. Does that worry you at all? The cohesion.
I heard that he could like come back during the finals, but I heard that the Miami Heat maybe we're choosing not to play him because they've been doing so well already. I don't know. Maybe you heard something different.
Yeah, I think there's a report today saying, well, from like an actual good reporter saying that he should be ready by game 3. Is he going to play? Yeah. Is he not? Be interesting to see. But
I would definitely say limit his minutes. Don't put him in the starting role. Very, very limited minutes and see how he contributes.
Definitely makes a lot of sense.
I agree. Jeff, I agree 100% with that. I smiled right when you said that, because that was something I wanted to harp on as well. Is like I think they're actually benefiting from an addition by subtraction situation right now. With the problem is it's not that Tyler Hero is a bad player by any marks. It's just that Tyler Hero, what he's able to provide to you kind of limits what these role players could provide, right? we already saw in that first round before he broke his hand or his wrist, I believe it was, that we already saw that Caleb Martin was starting to make a mark, right? And make sure that his presence was known, right? But with Tyler Hero having the ball more often, Tyler Hero is not really he's not really making plays for anyone else. He's really a shot creator, and he's trying to curate shots for himself. So that takes away from the fluidity in the offense. Right now, you're just seeing a very fluid team where you don't know who's really going to take the next shot. Jimmy Butler will take a large share of those shots, but what we know and what we expect out of Jimmy Butler is that 50% of the time that ball is going through the rim. So there's not a problem with that. Also, Brian, you were mentioning it was being reported by a credible source. That credible source was Chris Haynes. So it is that they're expecting him back, but like Giancarlo mentioned, I think they would ease him into it, being that this is the finals. Yes, Tyler Hero has had some experience in the finals in 2020, but I'm pretty sure they wouldn't force him into this. I'm actually more resigned to the fact of thinking, based off of what we just saw after Game 7, and it was something that I spoke on the pod last week, is why I believe this now, is I thought that if they did get to Game 7, as at that moment we didn't think that was even possible, I mentioned that I could see Miami Heat trying to possibly see if he could play that game. And the fact that the Heat didn't do that in this Game 7, and this was a pretty tumultuous series when you really think about it. The fact that they didn't do that just shows to me they're not going to rush him in the series, and I don't foresee him seeing big minutes in the finals.
I don't. I mean, at this point, I don't think he adds any benefit to the team. I mean, they've made this run without him. You know, at this point, what is he providing that they don't have already? Right? They already have the shot making. They already have the playmaking. Not a great defensive player. They're doing great defense. So I don't see what he would really provide with the current team they have.
Yeah, you think about like whose minutes does Tyler Hero get? Like, you want to give him Max Strus minutes, Duncan Robinson minutes. Like, those guys are performing really well. It'd be hard just to take anything away from them.
Yeah, I think yes. Like most of us think about this too. Once the playoffs comes around, you typically do start seeing a tighten rotation. So this rotation being solidified at this point, it kind of is going to be hard to have him there. But it definitely is a perfect trump card to have when you know that you're going into the series where you are playing a very potent Nuggets offensive, and that leads me to my next question to ask you, John Carlos, is what real answer is there to Jokic on this Heat team? And I think I can answer that on my own, but if there's even if there isn't a way to stop him, how do you try to slow him down with this team?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. My roommate was actually asking me the same question. They're like, okay, great. Well, here are the finals now, but what about Jokic? And I don't think there's much you can do about Jokic. There's only a few players in the whole league that probably could defend him. Maybe Embiid, maybe Giannis. There's not many more. I think Bam, you know, being a multiple time first team all defensive player, is going to have his hands full. He's going to do probably a decent job. But, I mean, nonetheless, I think, you know, Jokic will probably average 30-point triple-double. That's just what he does. I think the more important question is how you limit, you know, the other players' you know, offensive output, like Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. And Aaron Gordon, you know. But, you know, honestly, I don't think there's much that you can do besides, you know, having Bam have his hands full.
So you're throwing a single coverage on him. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, because you know the thing is, the entire starting lineup is so deadly. It's like who are you going to leave open, right? Because they're all they're all offensively gifted players. I said the entire season. I mean, they have the best starting lineup in the entire league. There's not one player that can't make a shot in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky position. It's like, do you double team him, or in that case, you'd be leaving open, very, still gifted player to make shots.
Yeah, I like that. I like at least seeing Bam try to take that coverage, because like you mentioned, not a lot of people can even stop him. Bam is probably going to be one of those people that is just probably best for the job. It's not going to be easy, but like out of every single center out there, that's one that I'm actually kind of happy with. You're never really going to have a super positive matchup there. And then if you double him, this is why Jokic is so good. He passes out of those doubles so easily. They see them all the time. I'm interested to see what happens if Miami tries to run like that zone defense again. It's worked so well for them this entire playoffs. It's a little scary to do that against this Nuggets team with so many good shooters, as you're just mentioning, Giancarlo. I guess I wanted to even ask of, so you mentioned a little bit of like Caleb Martin has been playing amazing. I'm actually more interested of someone who I did not even expect to actually give you some performance, and I've been kind of trash talking him a little bit in the podcast of Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry. I feel like Miami Heat fans, and tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like you guys have been, especially at the trade deadline, were wishing this man was out of here, potentially a buyout stuff and all this other stuff. Like Kyle Lowry, and he looked really bad in the regular season. He looked really bad. And then in the playoffs, I see this man looks like pretty close to his old self, playing a perfect role, playing great defense. What's that difference there?
Yeah, I guess it's just the championship experience that he has. After game 7 of last year, I thought he lost us the series because he just couldn't make a shot. I mean, he just was. I think he stagnated the entire team. I said, this guy has to be traded, but they kept him, and I'm actually liking what he's doing off the bench. With the limited minutes that he's playing very efficiently. He's playmaking. He's making shots finally.
Yeah.
So I think actually him and the addition of Kevin Love, their championship experience have really elevated the Heat. Those two players in particular.
I wanted to add something to that too. Is I agree with that 100%. Is Mark Jackson said this in the series with the Nuggets and the Lakers when it was game 4 and, LeBron was going off. Is, when you get to a certain age, you're not expecting them to be the same player you saw in their prime. But if they can muster up that energy for one game for 15 minutes, like that's what you're looking for. I think a lot of last season we were seeing they were expecting a different Kyle Lowry than we were accustomed to seeing, right? So they wanted him to be out there for 30 minutes, 40 minutes with their best guys, but that's just not who he is at this point, at this stage in his career. If he gives you 15 impactful minutes in any game, that's going to be helpful. And I think that's what they learned this year. That's why Gabe Vincent is starting as well. Once they started working out the kinks with that during the season, you saw a lot of shuffling with the point guard position in that sense. So seeing that really made it a lot easier to understand, like, hey, Lowry has that experience. And this is where I think you guys have the edge on the Nuggets, is that you have that experience to back you with guys that already were rotational players or players in the starting lineup that have had that experience in the finals, or you have these guys that have been to multiple finals, like you mentioned, Kyle Lowry now being his second time, and then Kevin Love, who's been, he had his fair share of finals that he went to as well. So, and then Udonis Haslem as well to be a mentor for a lot of the guys off the bench too. So you take the cake on experience. I have another question that deviates a little bit from what we were talking about, but makes it a little bit lighter, a little bit fun question to ask you. But, when I look at this run, I think of it more of like a kind of like a revenge tour, right? When you really look back at it, you look at who they played in that first round, the Bucks team that you have a lot of history with, right? You won some and you lost some with the Bucks. Having beating them, that must have been sweet. The Knicks had your number during the regular season. Then you have for the Eastern Conference Finals, the team that beat you in the same series. For you, I know the final is paramount, but which one would you say is the sweetest like victory in your mind of series?
Out of the 3 series they played in this playoffs, you're saying?
Yes. Yep.
I mean, it has to be the Celtics. I mean, the fact that they lost in Game 7 last year in the way that they did, I think it was they lost at Miami last year, which is even more tragic. And to do it in the fashion they did it, even though it was a very tumultuous run, they almost, came back with the fourth win and did the impossible. The fact that they won at Boston, I think is sweet as it can be.
Want to know what's crazy about that is it really has been 2 years of you guys taking that really like crazy game in Boston, because game 6 you won in Boston as well before they headed back to game 7 in Miami. We know what happened, but you know what I mean? Like you took the 2 most difficult games to take in a series and you won. You're in the finals now. So
It's funny. It's like the entire series against Boston, it seemed like the team that had the least pressure to win always won that game, right? Throughout every single game in that series, right? In game 7, all the pressure was on the Celtics to win, right? Everybody thought the Celtics would have win, but I think the pressure got to them, right? And it allowed the Heat to really elevate their game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the pressure coming in. I think one thing that's just so impressive to me about just this Miami team, like we keep talking about, of that experience, I think really plays into a part. Like I don't really think home court advantage is like a real factor against the Miami Heat, like especially like if when Miami goes to like is the visiting team and they're going to a different arena. To me, just watching them how they always play, like it does not phase them a single bit. Like they are completely locked in, and it goes to just to show like how good Eric Spoelstra has his team actually ready to play every single game. I'm curious, especially after this crazy run so far, not over yet. Where do you actually rank Eric Spoelstra as in the all time ranking of coaches? Because there's a lot of talk about this. He's always been kind of named, one of the best coaches in the league. I don't know if has he actually won a coach of the year. I feel like I don't remember. Yeah, I'm surprising. I don't think he has either. But everyone always says he's one of the best coaches, and obviously he has the pedigree to prove it. But I'm curious as to where you think he ranks in that list.
I mean, it's definitely within the top 5 coaches of all time, I think. I mean, what hasn't he done, right? That's the question I'll pose to you. It's like, what hasn't he done, right? He's done everything under the sun, it seems like. And now he's taking the 8th seed to the finals. I think that's the second time that's ever happened, right? So it's like, hey, what hasn't he done? What hasn't he done?
No,
I
agree.
I agree. Well, what he hasn't done, it's it's simple to answer that. He has not won the coach of the year, but
That's it.
but it is politicking, right? Like we all know it's politicking that happens with some of these awards. I it's a conversation for another day, but I would think that they should revisit how they do voting around the league, especially rewards like these, just so that there's a little bit more parity with it. Because sometimes there is, I think he got penalized in years that he should have won just because he was playing with a talented team. But if there's ever a year to show you that having a talented team is not the only way you win, is this season, and seeing that Celtics team, seeing how great, how dominant, how you know, it seemed like it was going to essentially be sketched in stone that the Celtics was going to the finals, let alone winning the championship this year with how they started the season. So for a team like the Heat to come and do what they've done, a lot of that is kudos to the coaching that they have around them. I don't think there's been a series that they've been in this year where there was a better coach going up against Coach Spoelstra, Eric Spoelstra. And again, just to hammer back in the coach of the year biasness to me is like you take a look at like, and I'm sorry, Brian, I'm going to use this guy as an example, but like take a look at Tom Thibodeau, guy that hasn't even made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, did it once in 2011 against Eric Spoelstra's team. But he only did the Eastern Conference once, and this man has 2 coaches of the year, and Eric Spoelstra has none. So that's all you need to know around like how I feel about that award and how they award it.
You know what I think is pretty funny? We're talking about all the coaches and like who he's gone up against. The Miami Heat have already made essentially the Milwaukee Heat fire their head coach. We could potentially see that happening as well against Boston, and like how this series was not supposed to go this way, and seeing Joe Mazzulla potentially getting fired. I wonder if that's still a narrative that's going to be going on. It's really crazy how much like no one was expecting this, but they've dominated most of these games in pretty spectacular fashion, and what an awesome underdog story.
Yeah.
Who is Joe Mazzulla to be a coach? I mean, I don't even know much of his history, but I don't know if you saw the news article that I actually remember watching this game. Joe Mazzulla's final game playing for West Virginia, he actually lost to Jimmy Butler and the Marquette Golden Eagles. So I mean, he's a very young coach, and I don't think he has any NBA experience. I don't, to be honest, I don't know much about his history, but it just doesn't seem like he's a very experienced coach to be coaching, the Boston Celtics with their pedigree of talent.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. He really did. I wouldn't say emerge out of nowhere would not be the best way to put it, but he, like you mentioned, definitely wasn't everyone's first choice or first thought of who was going to be the coach. If the Celtics were able to get ahead of this situation with Ime Udoka beforehand into our earlier in the summer, I don't think Will Hardy leaves. I think we're looking at Will Hardy being the head coach, who is the coach of the Utah Jazz now, being the head coach of the Celtics, rather. With him leaving and then taking members of that staff as well to his team in Utah, made it kind of barren for them to find the right assistant. And I think they played it, and trust me, I will never hold out criticism about Brad Stevens, but I would say that he did handle this situation the best way he could, right? Get someone that already knows the guys, that has some level of camaraderie with them, has been with the team for a few years. He's been there since 19, so he knows these guys, but he was more of like one of the behind the bench like assistants rather than the front bench assistants. So that's the only like thing that I would say. I think these are growing pains. He's gonna figure it out. I don't think you fire him right now. I think you see what the Celtics look like to start the season. If the Celtics shake up things, maybe it makes sense. Just get rid of him if you're planning to shake up things. But if you're not and you want to stand pat and you want to try it again with the same team, I say you go into an offseason letting him be the coach and round up the troops. So there's some camaraderie there.
Definitely agree, Jeff. I know we're cutting low on time here. Before we wrap it up, Giancarlo, I gotta ask. You mentioned You're a Jimmy Butler #1 fan over here. Give me your thoughts on Jimmy Butler this entire playoffs right now. What is he doing? What are you thinking?
I think he's playing good. At times great, you know. But I mean, the series against the Milwaukee Bucks and the series against the Knicks, I think he played a lot better than he did against the Celtics. I was disappointed with a lot of the games that he played against the Celtics, and I felt like, as we know, sometimes Jimmy Butler vanishes and he's not aggressive and he's not attacking the rim like he should be, and he did that a lot during the series. And I'll second that with, I think, Bam Adebayo has the same problem at times too, right? He's such a talented player, but especially in the playoffs, he seems to vanish and he's not aggressive. And whenever he does make an aggressive move, you're like, well, where did that come from? Why hasn't he been doing this the entire time? So I think both of them have a lot more potential than what they've been showing, and I hope that both of them show up in a better way against the Denver Nuggets.
Can I ask a question to tie that to you? So if they're at 100%, like both guys give 100 for the whole series, do you think they could? Do you think they win this series?
I think it's going to be tough no matter what way you put it. At the beginning of the year, I did say, hey, I think Denver is going to win it all, but just because of their talent. Their talent level is probably the best in the league, probably better than the Boston Celtics, in my opinion. But they're going to have to play at 100%. Jimmy's going to have to score at least, at least 30 a game. He's going to have to give you at least like 245 plus games even to have a chance at winning the series. So, even though I love the Miami Heat, I think there is a small chance that they actually come across and get this win. But if they do, those players are definitely going to have to step up. And, Jimmy's going to have to at least average 30, and Bam's going to at least have to average 20, 25 points a game.
I think that's well said. It'll be interesting to see how they come up against in this series. They've been underdogs pretty much this entire time. I feel like in the Knicks series, they're actually probably a lot closer, and probably favorites for some of the parts. But the entire time, no one's expected this Miami Heat team to perform like they have. They've done the impossible. It is so fun to watch. Really appreciate you hopping on here, Giancarlo. We're about to wrap up in a bit, but yeah, is there any last thoughts before we do?
Never doubt Jimmy buckets. We'll see.
Love it. There you go.
We will see. With this episode and all episodes moving forward are sponsored by Lockspread. With the NBA Finals finally here and the Eastern Conference Finals coming to a close, Lockspread is going to be your new best friend to get your daily fantasy picks in. Got a hunch on Butler's points over or under? Maybe you want to take a chance on Jokic's rebounds over and under. Or you want to take Murray on the steals for the lock of the century. Lockspread allows you to take a challenge into multiple sports, not just NBA, with options in the MLB, NFL, UFC, etc. Whatever player, whatever game is playing that night, know that Lockspread will have you covered. Remember, when you log into Lockspread, to use our promo code to take advantage of all of the sign-up bonuses. If there's a game, it's always a lock with Lockspread. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Lockspread, for the sponsor.
Ooh, Jeff. I love it. All the listeners as well. Use our code, link in the description. Code is 4TLOTG. You can use that. You get 100% of your first deposit matched up to $200. Why not do it? Click that link below. It'd be really awesome. Help out the show. Help out yourself. Win some money with Lockspread. Cool. Jeff, you ready to go on to our next topic?
Yes. So in our next topic is a perfect segue after that marvelous first topic, the Miami's impeccable run. We also saw an impeccable run on the Western Conference side. We talked about it last week. with the Nuggets. But now, as we're looking at these two teams setting up to go to battle on June 1st, this Thursday, um, we look at two players that their careers can be truly defined by the actions that happen in this 2023 finals. Those two players being Nikola Jokic and Jimmy Butler. Brian, who do you think stands to have their career more defined by this finals?
So I think the person who has actually more on the line, I've been kind of going back and forth on this a little bit, and I want to say it's Jimmy Butler. And the reason why I'm going to say this is because Jokic is Jokic is kind of already there. He's already on that line. And of course, let's say he wins this. He let's say he moves up. We were talking about it last week. He goes up from like 14 on the list to like maybe 13, maybe 12, which is a big move if in the grand scheme of things. But I feel like Jimmy Butler, if he really gets this, he's already known as a top 5 competitor of all time. Similar to like you see the stories with MJ and and I took that personally. We saw that hit with this season with Grant Williams. He just has like that next level competitiveness, and you can't doubt that. But always like the talent and what he's able to do every single day. As of now, I don't think Jimmy Butler is even maybe top 20 of all time. But if he gets this championship, does he get to that top 20 like I was mentioning? Probably not. But now there's actually a conversation. Now he jumps up from probably, I'm just throwing random numbers out here, but maybe 50 on the list to, or I don't even know if he was top 75 if he actually made that list or not. But he definitely kind of projects himself into that conversation if he gets a championship. Jokic is already there. He only moves up a little bit. I think Jimmy Butler has way more to prove on his legacy, which, to be honest, at the end of the day, I don't think Jimmy Butler is really the type of guy who cares about that, but always a fun conversation. Jeff, what do you think?
I think precisely from what you were saying about whether or not it will move him up to the top 20s is precisely the reason why I think it actually is the opposite, that it is Jokic. And the reason why I say it's Jokic is because I think he has far more to lose in the situation. I think Jimmy Butler will always, in my mind, be like a strange superstar that we've seen come to prominence because he is great. Like, by no means am I discrediting how great of a player he is, but like it's so hard to gauge how you view Jimmy or what you view Jimmy as. And I think it's best how you put it. Jimmy just doesn't care. And
Yeah.
like the fact that he doesn't care makes it a little bit easier to realize, like, in my mind, that he doesn't care where he's cemented at. That's why I don't think Jokic thinks about that either.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I think these are two guys that are never going to be sitting around thinking about those type of things. Um, but I know that we'll have a deeper dive, a deeper conversation as time passes. If Jokic never goes back to the finals and he loses here, where do we start putting him? Like, where do we think of him as a great all time? Like, if he never is able to win a championship, you know, that's why I think that his legacy is being placed on a line a little bit further than Jimmy's. I think Jimmy, just for going on this run, it's kind of like in my mind, like a Jason Kidd. In my mind, he's always going to be a great.
Hmm.
He may not be the top, the most great, the greatest player in the league, but he is always going to be considered a great for what he's done in his career, and that's already cemented. Now, if he goes off on like an extraordinary run where he's being uh, he's being considered, or he's in the conversation for finals and wins multiple finals, I think we have a different conversation about Jimmy Butler. But even with just one, I think it still becomes a little bit hard to put Jimmy into that conversation because he's not taking home any of the regular season accolades, and it's hard to put someone in the greats without the top of the greats of without seeing that type of resume as well. But I do think that Jokic is he should figure out how to win this one.
Yeah. I think so. Where I push back on that is more of I think their timelines are pretty different. I feel like Jimmy Butler, one, like we keep talking about, they weren't even Miami wasn't even supposed to be here. And I think about next season, Miami doesn't have a lot of ways to get necessarily better other than just their players improving and stuff like that. They don't really have a way to get better. Jimmy Butler is 33 right now. He's about to turn 34 in September. Jokic is only 28. That team, that Denver team is still so good. Even if they don't win it this year, depending on how the contracts look out, you can see them easily right back the following year. This Miami team, it feels to me like this is kind of the end of the run. We're talking about players like Kyle Lowry, Udonis Haslam. This is his last season. He's probably going to be on the bench, though. Even though he's on the bench now, he's going to be on probably as a coach. A lot of these guys, like this is kind of the end of their career, and this is like their real chance in order to actually win a championship. And if Jimmy Butler doesn't get it, now we're gonna think of him as some of those guys that never won a championship. It's gonna be worse than Charles Barkley's career, potentially on the same level as kind of a Melo's career and all that kind of stuff. Like great player, great performer, never was able to get it done. I feel like Jokic kind of has enough time. And anyway, even if Jokic, let's say, doesn't win a title, still the two MVPs, he could still win another one in the future. He has so many accolades already. Jimmy Butler doesn't necessarily have that type of accolades, but a championship though, that means a lot for his legacy.
I I hear that. I completely hear that. I I think Charles Barkley talks about it a lot too now. And it's funny you bring him up because what I'm going to say is kind of going to be along the lines of what you're saying, but like it's it's a good way to think about it for me in my mind. Is he mentions it a lot is that are he mentions that he's not defined by not winning a finals or anything. Like there's players that like he looks at a Kenny and he'll use this not
Yep,
and not to hurt Kenny's feelings, but I was the guy, I was the bus driver,
for
is what
sure.
he likes to say, right? And not a lot of people are able to be the bus driver, right? But I drove the bus in Charles Barkley's mind, maybe in just his mind, but I think that he believes that guys that go and out of their way to be on someone's bandwagon to get it done just are not going to be able to hold a candle to what did in his career. And he also constantly makes the argument about like we're just so ring hungry nowadays. Let's be honest. There's only been like 10 franchises when we really think about it that are consistently being thought of as champions, are winning championships, right? Like a large majority of the league has yet to have seen one, or they've barely seen one in their existence in the NBA in the 76 years that it's been in existence, right? So I hear that side of the Jimmy Butler. If he doesn't get to finish this up, um, his he'll just be considered one of those guys that never finished it up. But I think like that's again goes in mind for me is like for true NBA fans. Um, you look at guys like I mentioned before, like a Jason Kidd, like a Charles Barkley, that did everything, pulled the stops. Obviously, Jason Kidd won one later in his career, but those guys pulled the stops to make their teams when they were the bus drivers. Their teams win the championship. They just didn't have enough, and it's a game. It's a game about having as much chips pile up on your side, right? To win this game, right? So I just don't see us looking that much differently at Jimmy Butler if he never wins. But I think as a whole, if we're thinking about it on like a short term sense, right? Like just this 1 year, yes. Like I think he could stand to have this as a win, and it would be great for him because it's sooner rather than later because there's not going to be as much years left. I agree. But on a long term basis, if we're thinking of the consequences for both of them, like the consequences of not having this in the long term for Jokic for the rest of his career, where he never wins, like it will be definitely look worse on his career than it would for Jimmy Butler because these were teams that both times he went to the finals. I don't think anyone believed or thought they were going to be the teams that we're seeing in the finals.
I think that's definitely fair. So if I was Charles Barkley, to be honest, I'm gonna do the same coping as him. I'm gonna be like, no, I never won it, but that doesn't mean I'm a failure. Like the kind of the Giannis stuff. Like that's I'm gonna be coping as well. That's how you gotta live your life. Everyone's gonna bring up the rings, so you gotta downplay the rings. At the end of the day, what do we look at when we're really comparing these people? We look at their accolades, we look at all this stuff. Of course, the bus driver stuff is extremely important. So that's why, not all rings are created equal. Kenny's rings are not the same as Shaq's rings and all that other stuff. Very different. But at the end of the day, you still look at those rings. And I even think kind of like right now, if somehow there's a world where today no one wins the championship, and we look at we look at Jokic's career, we look at Jimmy's career, I'm gonna look at Jokic and just seeing him play every single day, like that guy is one of the most dominant and talented NBA players out there. Like that guy is so skillful. He up levels his entire team. Look at all his triple doubles. Look at the MVPs. Like this is what this guy's done. That guy is insanely good. And then I look at Jimmy Butler. Without a title, I'm like, this guy is one of the best playoff performers we've ever seen. And that's kind of it. I don't look at him as anything crazy, regular season. I don't look at his career like that insane, but just one of the biggest competitors out there. But with a championship, now I'm like, oh, Jimmy Butler, that guy got it done. That guy got it done when no one expected him to be anywhere close. That guy got it done as an 8 seed. Do you understand how insane that is? Jokic, he's already there. He's the first seed. He's regular. Like, this is what is expected of him. And which a chip, huge. A chip is kind of expected in his career. A chip is not expected in a guy like Jimmy Butler's career.
Okay, so then let me ask this question then. Because you got to remember, by Jimmy Butler actualizing this, that gives more ammo to someone that may have something to say about Jokic's career. Like we commonly see this with the LeBron James career. LeBron is regarded as arguably the best player to ever live, or the second best player to live. And what are some of the arguments as to why he may not be number one? Is first the losses in the finals, and not just the losses, the fact of how did he lose, right? 2011 is definitely one that always comes top of mind. But now you have a few of the Spurs. Yeah, he had lost to the Spurs in '07, lost to the Spurs in 2014. He has reasons for you to say like I'm going to argue this. I think Jokic losing to an eighth seed arguably would be a worse, more damning thing on his career than any of those things that LeBron has, you know?
It'd be pretty damning. It'd be pretty bad. But I think what would fix it all is if he won a chip later in his career. Like, and that's why I just think like this is not the end of the world if he doesn't win this one. And now I'm gonna be completely honest. I think he's gonna win this one. I think this Denver team is just that good. If everyone, barring health and everyone's all good and everything like that, I think this Denver team is that good. But if he doesn't win, I'm not really looking. I'm not personally. I wouldn't blame, or I don't see a world where Jokic is actually the reason why they didn't win. I would see the world where like, hey, maybe some of these other guys just didn't hit their shots, and it was that Miami defense was insane. And also, is it actually as bad when it's like the 8 seed when they've actually already beaten the other two best teams in the NBA, where the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics? Like, that's just that much more impressive for Jimmy if he was actually able to get over this hurdle as well.
I think I think it doesn't. I don't think it changes anything in anyone's mind because like then I could say the same thing about the Celtics. If the Celtics could say, well, they already beat the Bucks, who everybody thought was going to win, right? And it still stings. You know what I mean? So I still think it would sting. I
Yeah, of
can
course.
I hear where you're coming from in the aspect of if he's able to win other championships that he can erase it a little bit, but I think we have more haters in the league than we have people that are supporters. So that will definitely be something that would make its rounds in the Twitter sphere with people that when you think of Jokic, that's great. I guess you know what, like that's a question to ask the viewers. Like
Mhm.
if you listeners have anything to comment on this or like how you feel about that, that would be an intriguing conversation. I would love to see. And I think you know what? Why don't we just poll this out on Twitter too?
Ooh, that's a good
Um,
idea.
and see what everyone is thinking. And then next time we record, most likely the finals will be over the next time we record. So
Yep.
um, we'll see what the masses are thinking, and that could be a lot of to unpack on after the finals.
Yeah, exactly. I'm definitely interested. Please, listeners, definitely go onto that poll. Let us know in the comments. I want to know who do we think's career is actually more important for this championship right now? Is it Jimmy Butler? Is it Jokic? I'm very intrigued into to see how this actually goes and plays out.
Definitely.
That's I believe that's all we have for our topics. Wanted to make this one a little bit quicker for the listeners. What I'm thinking about doing, generally I release these episodes on Monday. I think I'm gonna try to release this one a little bit earlier just so it's more topical and also it doesn't get out of date because I can imagine I'm gonna try to get this out before they play, I believe on Thursday, because hey, imagine the Nuggets blow out the Heat, or the Heat blow out Denver. Now it's a whole different conversation. So I'm pretty intrigued. So try to get this one out a little bit earlier. So listeners, like I mentioned, let us know what you guys think in the comments. Jeff, is there anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yep. Actually, I think you noticed this week. I noticed this week. This is something that we're quite proud to see. We passed the 1,000 subscribers threshold on YouTube. We appreciate everyone, even if you listen for 10 seconds or you listen the whole way through. We appreciate everyone that takes the time to value what we're saying about a sport that we both love. Brian, thank you for being a great partner in this. And Congrats to this one, and here's to the next 1,000.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up. It definitely is a pretty crazy milestone to hit, and like Jeff was saying, can't do it without you guys listening. Really appreciate it. Like Jeff was saying, I can't agree more. I mean, it's 5 seconds, letting us know what you think in the comments below. It's all of this really matters, and all of this really care. Like, we care a lot about it, and so we're gonna keep doing this. We're gonna provide more episodes. Where this is episode 55, we're gonna keep going more and more. We don't do it for the subscribers, but it's also just really awesome to see when some stuff actually starts working and there's actually some traction. So appreciate everyone actually spending the time listening. We know there's a million podcasts out there listening to ours. Hey, hopefully you learned something new today and get some new perspective on the NBA. And yeah, Jeff, also my co-host, showing up all the time, prepared, coming out with the great topics and everything. Jeff is the man. Appreciate you. It's been like you said, here's 2 more. Let's try to get to that 100 episode mark. That's at least my goal. If we can get to 100 episodes, I'm pretty satisfied with what we were able to do regardless of numbers.
Perfect. I agree 100%. Here's to, like you said, here's that road to 100 episodes. And I said this last year as we were coming towards the end, and I'm going to say it again, is that every year we look to improve. We look to improve one way or the other. I hope that from year to year, you consistently see us growing as a podcast, growing as partners in this podcast, and um, providing a podcast that is worth the listen. The only way we're able to do that is through your support and through your advice on like ways that we can become better. So always feel free to reach out to us through all of our social medias to let us know ways that you think we can improve, some things you want to see out of us, things you want to learn about us as well, and learn about the podcast a little bit more too. So um, here's to another great NBA season. We're in for a wild next 2 weeks for these finals. I hope the listeners and you, Brian, are ready for I would say, the most fun time of the year. It's just sad that our teams never are
Yeah, I know.
there.
My heart.
But here we are. We are here at the end of the season, and I'm ready. You know what, listener? I'm ready for the off season to start talking about that, because that's our
Yeah.
commonplace over here with our 2 teams. Is the
Yeah.
off-season.
Hey, at least you got pretty close. At least you got some actual. This is like my first time actually seeing, like, wow, playoff basketball made it past the first round. Mind blown. So now, now we got to figure out how our teams can actually retool for next season, so we can be disappointed again. But it's gonna be fun. I'm excited for it. All right, everyone. Well, this has been a lot of fun. This has been episode 55.